In recent years, we've become heavily dependent on the wallows for reduction of summer heat stress on the sows. And the summer temperatures which we're now experiencing are so much greater than they have been in the past. This has caused me to revisit the idea of providing shades as basically a support to the wallow, a backup to the wallow. Creating wallows is a costly process, a time-consuming process, a lot of machinery, vast amounts of water and labour are used in creating them. So if we can just lighten the load a little bit on the wallow and get some of the sows using shades, then hopefully that'll have a lot of positive effects on the unit, for the unit. I decided to have a look at the conventional mesh shade again because we've now got something which is far better to anchor off, and we don't really need to be attempting to put poles and posts in the ground and that sort of thing, which was probably the failing of the shades in the past. So we're strapping large 4 by 6 metre shades between 2 dry sow huts, but also we're trialling a few slightly less conventional methods. We've created what's been nicknamed the gazebo ark, which is mounted on 4 large 500 litre plastic barrels filled with earth for ballast, and we strap that to the top of those to effectively give a shade, but also a canopy provided by the original ark. We've also gone as a bit of a halfway house where we've just used 2 tanks, and the dry sow hut has ended up on a pitch on an angle. So still giving the sows a little bit more protection from the elements, but also increasing the amount of airflow under the sides of the huts and around the sows, hopefully a bit of extra shade as well. I think the shade is probably in some ways the more user-friendly one, because it's something we're able to set up a little bit in advance prior to it really being required, but it doesn't interfere with the existing accommodation that's already there. Whereas the raised ark, obviously you're making a decision from now on it's going to be hot and warm and we need that hut up in the air. It became very apparent when we got our first few warmer days, probably 17, 18 degrees, and the sows were under them and using them as we imagined they would, as a shade. With the raised ark, obviously that's the sows' housing as well. So they're under it, but they're under it because there is no option B really. And there's a decent amount of shade created by that canopy. So the vast majority of the paddock would be, the sows in the paddock would comfortably be able to fit under there. I'm hoping that they'll be moving between the wallow, the huts, the ventilated huts and the shades, and out grazing on the grass as well. The durability of them certainly looks to be very good, and the fact that they're being used for other livestock, I think used for poultry and cattle in certainly in other parts of the world. So there has to be a reasonable level of durability there. And I think if we're managing to keep them out of harm's way, so we don't damage them, the sows don't damage them, certainly 5 years, in excess of 5 years is probably achievable. And obviously they'll be stored away, taken down at the end of the summer, stored away and brought out next year, so they're not going to be there all year round. We're in a much better place now to keep the shades in good working order, and in that case I think I would like to roll them out and use more of them. Initially probably in the service area and then expand into the dry sow areas as well, but it's really the period and point of conception and early pregnancy where I can see them being initially the biggest benefits. I think we've kind of tackled the farrowing area first, where the piglets are born, and I think now is probably the right time to start looking at the group housed areas and seeing what tweaks and improvements we can make there. And yeah, certainly if we can make life a little bit easier for the staff through the intensity of the summer heat, when wallows at the moment are front line of defence, we can just take a little bit of pressure off the wallows with shades, then everyone's going to benefit.